Well, good morning. We're looking at our presentation called Act Early, the Early Start Years. So hopefully you're here where you're supposed to be. Okay, so with every presentation, we talk a little bit about what our mission is, and we as Matrix Parent Network are hoping to empower families with children with special needs to successfully understand and access the systems that serve them. And we want to be able to give you the knowledge to be able to be successful advocates and role models for your children. And when we're talking about accessing systems, it starts really from the early start years all the way to adulthood. And there's multiple systems that are serving you at every transition. So knowing about those systems and how to negotiate those systems allow you to become a successful advocate for your child. So I am Birgit. I am a parent advisor here for 5 years. I have a son who started in early start. He has intellectual delay with also a secondary diagnosis of autism. And early start was really the starting of our path through early start years and special education. So without early start, we probably aren't where we would be now in this journey of his schooling. So this is the things that we like to focus on in this act. So the 5 developmental milestones, which are divided between cognitive, which is your thinking, physical, communication, social, emotional, and adaptive. And you do have a chart of those milestones in your packet. The adaptive is incorporated in all of the other 4 milestones that are on that sheet. We also are going to look at the early start roadmap. And within that, the Individuals with Disability and Education Act. If you are now in early start, who those early start providers are and what they do, and also regional centers who play a part in early start, what the eligibility is, and what we call an individual family service plan. So our 5 developmental milestones is cognitive, like I said, thinking, learning, and processing. The social emotional, which is a respond to others and their surroundings. Language and communication, both receptively, which is understanding the language, being able to process the language, and expressive, being able to respond to that language and expressing yourself appropriately. And then lastly, gross motor, which is movement, and the physical piece. Again, all this incorporates in adaptive skills. So here are an example of developmental milestones at 2 months. Does your baby begin to smile and pay attention to your face? Do they hold up their head and begin to push up when they're lying on their tummy? Do they turn their head towards sounds and begin making gurgling sounds themselves? And like I'll go back to, there's a chart of these developmental milestones, which are divided in those categories, which you can always refer back to. You also can follow these milestones on the CDC website, as well as the 0 to 3.org website, which you can then track these things digitally. So you can either have the paper form we've given you, or you could track these within those websites. So the examples of the next milestones are at 4 months. Or actually at 6 months, sorry. At 6 months, does your baby know familiar faces and like to look at themselves in the mirror? Do they string vowels together when battling and responding to their name? Do they roll from front to back and back to front, begin to sit without support? The next slide would show us now the milestones at 1 year. Does your little one cry when you leave and repeat sounds to get attention? Do they say dada or mama and try to imitate the words you say? Do they copy your gestures and follow simple directions like pick up your toy? Do they pull up to stand in, taking a few steps on their own? And at 2 months, 2 years, we're looking at them showing some independence and getting excited when they're with other children, saying sentences with 2 to 4 words and points to objects in a book, play simple make-believe games and follow 2-step directions and stand on tippy-toe and kick the ball. I like to always say, you know, your child develops in their own progression. So concern only about where they need to be would be if they're far away from that milestone. So if they're a little bit late, then there might be not any note of concern. If they're months away from where they should be, then that's more concerning. So some people want to be hyper sensitive to the milestones, but also remember, gender makes a difference in how the child develops. If they're bilingual, it takes, it's that milestone reaching is a little bit different. With my son, you know, he was a German speaker first and then an English speaker. So while his language was delayed, we had only thought it was because he was a boy, as well as that he was bilingual. But as he grew and wasn't showing where he needed to be, that's when we got to the point of having concerns, and then having that discussion with our physician. So again, these are just guidelines. If like I say, if your child is close to where they need to be within the milestones of any given stage, then it may not be such a great concern. If they're moving away further from where they should be, then that would be a time to put some questions forth as to where your child really in their development. So here's the early start roadmap. There's this way, that way, or another way to go. Usually the most likely thing that's going to happen is you, or maybe even your child care provider, will see that your child is not meeting those milestones. When the child caregiver sees that, and that's not you, they'll probably talk to you about, I'm seeing that Joe is not doing this or that. Then you take usually your concerns to the physician, and then the physician refers them to early start services. Or if they have multiple delays in multiple areas, they may refer you directly to the regional center, which we will explain later in this presentation. Anyone can refer to the regional center. It can be a daycare provider, it can be you, it can be your physician, but most likely that starting of that conversation starts with physician. And parents sometimes doubt themselves about when is the right time to speak to the physician. Remember, you're your child's expert. You are with that child 24/7. So go with your gut feeling. If something's not right, then talk with your physician about that and see if that will lead to needing an assessment and early start services. So here are the people who might be involved in giving early start services. We'll start with the role of the speech and language therapist, or pathologist as they're called, and they assess the speech, language, social and cognitive communication, and swelling disorders as well. We have further explanation of what each is in the next coming slides. So here we have speech disorders. Those are difficulty producing speech sounds correctly or fluently, and has problems with their voice volume. So my niece had what they were calling apraxia. She had difficulties producing the speech and the sounds to make the words, but she understood everything. So that is what we call an expressive disorder, not a receptive disorder. And then here we talk about language, again, the difficulty understanding others. So what is that person saying to you? Are you able to process what they're saying? And then sharing your thoughts and ideas and feelings appropriately through your own words. So social communication, we don't look at communication only in the words we say, we also pick up social cues in the community. So this person who has problems with social communicating is not picking up those cues and not responding either verbally or non-verbally to those cues. And then we have the cognitive communication. It's the difficulty in organizing thoughts, paying attention, remember, planning, and problem solving. And then of course, difficulties in swallowing and eating. And when you want to put this in terms of early start, this cognitive or social communication is that they're not responding to the community and they're not paying attention to that person who's speaking. So as kids are learning how to babble, they may not be babbling, they're not replicating what sounds they're hearing in the community. And so again, when we relate this to early start, this is around those pieces. And then a child who can't swallow different food types. So, we start with fluids and we go to pureed food, then to solids. This is where the speech therapist is helping them. So then we have the occupational therapist. So this is about adaptive skills, but it's also about sensory and fine motor, and then what they call self-help or activities daily living. Again, in the response to early start, it's your child starting to learn how to put their pants on, how to button buttons, how to hold pencils, how to put shoes on and tie shoes, and even just moving blocks and putting blocks and toys in boxes is all doing with fine motor. So there's more explanation as to what I'm starting to say here on the next few slides. So difficulties again in activities of daily living, which is incorporating motor planning, problem solving, and intentional skills. Then there are people who have sensory processing disorder, and they're unable to synthesize information from the basic five senses, which is sight, smell, touch, hearing, and taste. Again, all that we do requires coordination and movement, and also some visual perception. So these are the things that they look at assessing and seeing if there's a need to work on those particular things. So the physical therapist is looking at what we call gross motor. There's a array of motor skills, and their evaluation includes strength, the range of motion, flexibility, coordination, gait, sensory processing, and balancing. So again, when we look at early start stages, are they rolling? Are they sitting up? Are they scooting? Are they crawling? And then are they pulling themselves and starting to walk? So those are the things that they would be looking at with the child as they go through their milestones. So when we talk about early start, there's a federal law called the Individuals with Disability Education Act, which mandates that infants to 3-year-olds receive early start services. Early start services are to be coordinated services and support so that the little ones make progress in their development and prepares a child for preschool and beyond, and has to be family centered. So it has to happen in the natural environment, and you as a parent have a primary role in that family centered approach. So you will be sort of the point guard for this process in early start. So again, as I said, most physicians, if there's more than one delay in one area, they will go and refer your child to the California Regional Center. My son is a regional center client because he has multiple delays. If he were just having a speech language delay, probably we would just be referred directly to a speech therapist. So the California Regional Centers in our area, which is Marin and San Francisco, is Golden Gate Regional Center. For Solano and Sonoma County, it's North Bay Regional Center. So every county has a regional center to provide these service coordinators who will help with your plan. So they're the providers of early start for children, again, with development delay in more than one area of development. And the referrals are really made by pediatricians, care providers, or if you feel like something is not right, you yourself can call that information intake line and refer your child. So here was what happens once the regional center gets involved. So once the referral is initiated, a service coordinator is assigned to the child's case. So once the referral is done, the service coordinators then will call you and ask your interest in early start interventions, explain the parental rights, give you a consent form for assessment, and talk to your child assessment plan. Okay, so I just wanted to say with any kind of service that you get through the regional center, there's always to be parental consent. And really the starting of evaluating your child starts with that assessment. And if you, consent to that assessment, that's starting the process of getting your child assessed, their needs identified, and then the service to be put in place. So then with everything, a service plan is put together. You're part of that piece by giving them information about where your child is, what their interests are, what their hobbies are, what concerns you have. And again, by law, this individual family service plan honors the belief that the home environment is essential for your child's successful outcomes, and that you and your child need that support. So those are the premises of this IFSP. We do have a packet on our website, which is the early years, which explains the IFSP a little bit in greater detail. So I would refer you to that if you wanted to have more detailed information. So we always want to look at communication in any of the systems we're working with. And so we ask you to remember the 3 C's in having effective and collaborative communication. So the 3 C's is communication, cooperation, and collaboration. If you guys work as a team, then everybody's interests are being heard and interests are being addressed. And so that produces a more thorough IFSP, as well as a relationship that you will have if your child starts really early on in early start. Your relationship with those providers and the service coordinators could be up to 1-2 years. We always like to cover how to start to your early start providers, so will listen, and so the early providers will listen to you. So always acknowledge and process your emotions. Really focus on your child's needs. That's what you're there for, is getting your child's needs met. Always listen and ask questions. If you need it to be repeated or reflected or rephrased for clarification, please do that. And you may want to shoot for the moon, but really build on small agreements. Small agreements lead to the overall goal or outcome that you want. And it's very stressful, this whole piece. You've just found out your child's not where they need to be. You're having to enter a new system altogether with lots of new phrases and terms. So be as lighthearted and use humor, and be appreciative of those people who are trying to help you through the process. And then they'll show the respect to you and you to them. And that will make that relationship much more fruitful. And always be grateful and assume that these early start service providers, or the team that you're working on, is doing the best they can. So we always believe in matrix to begin conflict resolution at the lowest level. So if you have concerns and issues about effective communication, cooperation, and collaboration is not working, then you can climb up the conflict resolution ladder. Here's the website about parents' rights. Here you can educate yourself on the Independent Family Service Plan Parents' Right, and that will give you the direction as to how to deal with a conflict.
You're welcome to call Matrix or whoever is your local parent center or family resource center. And if you're having trouble figuring out who that is, you are welcome to, call us to figure out who that is. I think Birgit said at the beginning, but for those of you who missed it, the counties that we cover are Sonoma, Solano, Napa, and Marin, but every part of California has their own basically sister center like ours. So, you can certainly call us. You can connect with your case coordinator, your service coordinator, whatever their title is, the person who is your contact at the for early start. Or, of course, you can always go back to your pediatrician, your doctor. You can call a meeting, with an individual person or with the whole group to discuss the whatever problem you might be having with early start. And if it goes beyond this level, there are ways to file a complaint with the Department of Developmental Services.